what's up, everybody? So today we're going to talk about the pay of Pride and the pay of fighters today, and an interesting, very interesting clause in one of my Pride contracts. Check it out.
1978とある田舎町で生まれて移り住んだ新宿で育ちこの町で起きたこれまでの俺たちのここまでの生い立ちはほんのまた序の口試されたいちいち正してきた過ち騙し合いやからしないはスニッチの始まり放課後の登山所児童館にホームアローンそんな時間はほったらかして向かったとある場所
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Yamatodamashii podcast. Again, in person. We thought we'd take the time to talk to you guys a bit about fighter pay, right? Fighter pay is one of the most common topics that comes up in the MMA community. You see it on Twitter all the time. And what I kind of wanted to do today was kind of maybe talk to you a bit about what fighter pay was like for in your generation. You know, we're talking about the 2000s, so it was a very different time, but also Pride was very big. So I'm curious to know what those negotiations looked like. So when we talked about this topic, one of the cool things was you said, well, I've still got one of the contracts and I've still got all the emails and the negotiations. So we've just actually spent a bit of time just going through it and reading it, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. But I guess the first question really around it is, did you have a manager that sort of looked after your pay, or was this something that you did by yourself?
Well, yeah, so I actually did everything on my own.
Right.
The thing we did was we played a game where we pretended like Egan would be my manager. So for I think for negotiations you always need that backdoor out. Mm-hmm. So what Egan did was negotiating. I mean, talking to me. I was actually telling him what to write. We're actually doing it together. Mm-hmm. And it always came where Egan is the mean hard ass manager, demanding the money. And I know exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. Actually, even changing some of the wordings that he wanted to use. Right. And we always thought that if we hit a dead end, mm-hmm. and it was like, oh shit, they're not gonna move, then I come on and say, wait, I'll override Egan.
Nice.
So,
it's a good strategy.
Yeah. So it was a good strategy. It was pretty much self-done myself. So, for me, like having a manager and paying the manager 15% or whatever is something that I never experienced. And I think as far as fighter pay in that day, I probably got better pay than most of the fighters.
Right. I mean, it definitely seems like it. Looking at the negotiations, you're definitely playing hardball, right, with some of them. Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Some of the language in the emails, and our viewers can probably imagine what it looks like, right? It's not the most formal written emails. It's kind of Egan saying things like, if you don't understand this, then you must be ignorant.
Yeah. Are you fucking joking?
Are you fucking joking? Yeah, it's kind of pretty blunt. So it'd be interesting to know like how that compares to maybe modern day fighters these days.
Well, I don't know how it is today, but for us, what we had to always keep in mind as fighters is that they need us. And I think that power of negotiation is never feeling that you have to have that fight, right? Like it has to be to a point where the promoter knows that, hey, you know what? If you're not going to meet my terms, I'm not fighting. And that's when you got the power. If you got the power, if the power is the opposite side where you go and ask to fight the promotion, I want to fight, they already started from the upper hand with the power of, we know you want to fight, we'll play hardball with you. Yeah. So it was like that all the time. Whenever they always asked me to fight, and it was always like, let me see who you got in mind. How much you gonna pay? And then always like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to fight. So it was always that. I always had that. They knew that I would turn down any fight.
Yeah, it definitely makes it. You have the upper hand when they know kind of that you're not just gonna say yes, right? And I feel like in the modern day MMA scene, there seems to be a lot more fighters that are just happy to police the promotion and go along and just say, yes, I'm happy with the terms of my deal. Maybe it's because there's less promotions. I don't know. What do you think the difference
I think there's
is?
so many fighters now.
Right.
That if this fighter doesn't, like if Enson doesn't want to fight, okay, we'll just go grab this guy.
Right.
And I think it also depends on your name and how much the association needs you. Like, for example, this comment, in this modern day now, like Conor McGregor, he has the power because they want him to fight.
Yeah.
So but you got all the lower fighters that pretty much got to fight for whatever they're asked for. They'll say, okay, you don't want to fight, we'll find someone else. There's 1,000 other fighters at your level, at your fame, that can be used. So I think it's that sacrifice you got to take in the beginning.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it was like that too. When I first fought, I fought for Shuto. I fought for $2,000, $3,000. You know, so for me, it was obvious that I wanted to fight because I asked to make a debut in the professional fighting. So I asked them. So I started off right away that I was the one that wanted to fight. So they had the power of negotiation. So that's how I think with every fighter it starts off, because if you're a no name, no one's going to want you.
Yeah.
So you've got to want to fight. So you pretty much got to sacrifice in the beginning that, go and be a company man and say yes to what the company asks.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think it's interesting now how you really have to do something to stand out from the crowd to really sort of justify those higher paychecks. It's kind of, and it's a bit of a balance, right? Like, you can be that guy that goes in, talks shit, and calls out everyone, but then you might become hated in the MMA community, right? Like, the fans might hate you, the fighters might hate you as well. So, any advice on how you think is the best way to conduct yourself to really try and earn that higher pay?
Well, my advice wouldn't be really good advice, because for me, it wasn't about making money. It was about carrying yourself with honor. And I think I was just lucky enough that my fight style overcame any type of shit talk or any type of circus display that you can make to try and stand out and look fun or look interesting or be hated or be loved, So I was lucky. So for me, I was real. Whatever you saw me in any press conferences or any interviews, everything was real. I never tried to sell myself. I never tried to up-talk myself. I never tried to be a villain or a hero. It was me. And I was lucky that the real Enson was something that fans wanted and was something that promotions wanted.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that. It's funny because I think about it with my marketing head on, and a prime example of an example from this trip, right? We watched Rising, New Year's Eve. Someone like Juan Archuleta, who actually came out, made a huge entrance. For me, that makes me think that the Japanese fans will want to see him again. They're going to be interested in his next fight because he went the extra mile. He did the big entrance. That I still think that sort of thing raises fighters' stock sometimes. Like, when you bring a bit more of your personality into it, I think that can be quite a good thing for your future negotiations, because you build a wider fan base, and then the promotions know, actually, we got people that want to see that guy.
Yeah, well, I think it's because in this day and age there's a lot of entertainment involved. So the show you can put on is good. And on the other hand, Archuleta's ring entrance and everything, I had little goosebumps. It was fucking awesome. He comes out like a warrior. He goes and dances across almost like a war dance.
Yeah.
I'm going to go die now in the ring. I'm going to go fight. I'm going to war. I do my dance. And as extravagant, as beautiful as that was, someone like me walking in a t-shirt with no show, no nothing, no smile, just walking down. I think for me, what was lucky was I really did have the energy to where I was planning to die in the ring. So I think the people could feel that energy. And although I didn't say a word, I didn't dance, I didn't have any nice outfit, just the expression on my face, the energy you could feel from me, I think, that also was a show in itself. That was an aura, there was energy that people couldn't describe. So I mean, that's another way to do a show. Something supernatural.
I think that's what made you unique as a fighter, right? Because you felt, it's almost like your character is Yamatodamashii, your character is that warrior spirit, but it's not really a character, that's just who you are. It's just that it's translated, but when people see it, that's the appeal. They want to see that. They want to see you fight that way.
I was lucky.
Yeah.
I was lucky that just who I was,
yes,
the way I fought, fighting to ready to die in the ring wasn't something that I did on purpose or played an act into to sell tickets to make the promotions want me. It was just how I was. So I was just really blessed that the way I was normally, without having to put a single inch of acting in it, was something that people wanted to watch, the fans loved, and the promotions needed. Right. So I was just really lucky on that.
So I mean, coming back to that contract, right? It was fascinating to see what was in it. I think the one line in it that shocks me the most is around the drug testing. I mean, that in itself is interesting to see. How do you want to?
Yeah, so I got the contract right here. Here's the contract. So the contract, we look into the area of third page has illegal use of narcotics. It's that last paragraph. So illegal use of narcotics is how you read it.
I will read it out. So it says, a fighter agrees to be tested immediately following the fight of each fighting event to confirm the freedom from use of marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and barbiturates. Should the test result be positive, then fighter shall forfeit all amounts payable under this agreement. And this next line is, performance-enhancing stimulants of steroid-based family are specifically excluded from the scope of the test.
So in other words, it's okay to take steroids.
Yeah, we're not testing for steroids.
Yeah.
But we're testing for everything else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, it says what it is, right? But that kind of sums up. I mean, I think people know right? You look at some of the guys that were fighting back then.
Yeah.
And it was obvious. I don't think there's any sort of secrets there now. I don't think this is, that controversial. But just in case anyone was wondering, it was in the contract right there.
Yeah.
So,
and the funny thing about that is, even till today, if you hear someone was taking steroids, you say, oh, he's a cheater. But no, he was not a cheater, because that wasn't cheating. That was okay. The funny thing is when I went into fights, I already went into fights knowing that there's a very good possibility that the fighter I was going to fight was going to be on steroids. So it was something given. It was something that I set into my mindset when I was preparing for a fight. It wasn't something that if he's doing steroids or not, it didn't really matter, because I was preparing for this guy, and if he did steroids, and that's the way I was going to fight it.
So I think the one thing you got to say, right, is that that's written in the contract, so it's kind of like a level playing field for everyone, because if that's the standard clause around drug testing for leading up to a pride fight, then everything's fair game. And I guess that kind of maybe encouraged the culture a little bit of
well, you know what I felt too was that if you're talking straight up powerlifting, that's totally going to be an advantage. But fighting, you can be stronger. You can get the strongest man in the world, and you can let him have him punch you, and then you have someone maybe like a light heavyweight punch you. I think someone who knows how to punch would be more dangerous than someone that's super strong taking steroids. So for me, I felt there was a give and take, because when you take steroids, doesn't mean you're gonna, you might recover faster, you might get stronger, but of course with more muscle, you're gonna probably burn stamina faster. You're gonna if you got way more muscle, you're gonna move a little slower. So for me, I was fighting in the unlimited weight class. So for me, if I was fighting someone like when I fought Mark Kerr, I thought, okay, I know he's going to come in with a lot of power. So for power, I'm not going to be able to beat him. So I worked on more stamina and more speed. When I fought someone like Randy Couture, who was about 20 pounds heavier than me, he wasn't super powerful. So that way I try to keep my weight up so I could match him with power. So, I think there's a strategy for everything. Taking steroids, of course, he's probably going to get better training, get better recovery, be a little stronger. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a better fighter. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have more heart in the fight, because steroids is not going to make you have a stronger heart to overcome fear and pain.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Do you remember your first reaction when you saw this clause?
No, I don't, because it wouldn't have surprised me.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah. So it was already understood that they were doing everything.
I wonder if this clause came out later down the line, during maybe 2004, 2005. I wonder if it's something that got removed.
No, I don't think it ever got removed.
Really? Wow.
I think it always was in there. In Japan, they were allowed to do steroids. It wasn't considered cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course it wasn't vocal about it. I'm taking steroids. Those people weren't saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was understood that if the fighter was huge and muscular, like Mark Kerr, those guys, they're probably taking steroids.
Yeah. It was kind of... it wasn't frowned upon, right? Because it's not.
No, I didn't frown upon it at all. If he thinks that having power and more muscle is going to be better for his fighting style, that's great. For my fighting style, it wouldn't have mattered for my fighting style. It wouldn't have made me a better fighter. So
that makes sense. And then, also when we've been going through these contracts, looking at the negotiation emails, seeing the back and forth. I mean, just in terms of how Egan is writing the emails, how do you think that compares to? I don't know. You probably know you don't want to go into too much information about Tsushi's sort of.
I don't do any negotiation for Tsushi.
Right.
Absolutely none. So I have no idea how they negotiate now, but
is.
I'm pretty sure that most of the times it's Rising suggesting the fight money and him pretty much going with it or saying, "Oh, can you please give me a little more?" So the tone is really different.
Yeah, tone is definitely different.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like if Rising will suggest the fight money, and Tsushi, well, it doesn't need to be Tsushi. Any fighter would either say, "Oh, okay," or "Oh, can you pay me more?" In my day, it was the opposite way. We suggested the fight money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's the big.
And
difference,
it was always like anything you do in any type of business negotiation when you're negotiating. Even if you go to Thailand, you're negotiating buying a CD. You go up there and you say, okay, you're thinking to yourself, okay, the price they have is say $20 for the CD, and you're willing to pay 15, but you're going to negotiate, so you start at 8.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go up to 10, you're going up to 12, and the last thing you're going to do is go over. You're not going to go over 15. So it's kind of like that. So if I'm here and saying, okay, I want 80,000 to fight Mark Kerr, we're going to start at 200,000.
Yeah.
And negotiate it down. Yeah. So I think the whole starting approach is different. The whole atmosphere of the negotiations is different, because I think the whole atmosphere of the negotiations in our time was us calling the shots, us saying, "Oh, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous." I think nowadays it's the opposite way.
Yeah, I think it's star power, right? Like you said at the beginning, the McGregors, the Mayweathers, the Nate Diaz's, they're probably having those conversations how you were having them, right? Like, no,
probably,
I'm fighting for this.
Yeah.
But the maybe the lower guys that haven't got that star power, that they're not using the same sort of negotiation skills. What do you think though when you see fighters openly complaining about how much money they're getting made?
Well, for one, the first thing I would say is when I see the fighters pay nowadays, like you got fighters walking away from a fight and buying a house.
Yeah.
I'd had a hard time buying a house, putting 3 fights accumulated, So for me, when I look at that, I wanted to fight. There's something I wanted to do. The fact that I was getting paid for it was just a bonus.
Right.
So it wasn't like I'm making a living. I'm fighting because I want to make a living. It's a whole different look. So for me, when I was fighting, whatever they would pay me was a bonus. The only time when I would really get hardball is when I think I'm worth more than that. This fight's more exciting than that. And I always looked at the fights as a job. So if I'm gonna fight Mark Kerr, it's good. And if I'm gonna fight, say the guy fought in Pride 5, Nishida, Mark Kerr's job's gonna be a lot harder.
Right.
Nishida's job's not as hard. So I think you should get paid to what the job you're gonna do. So for me, if I'm gonna fight Mark Kerr, I need more money. If I'm gonna fight, it's gonna be Nishida. I don't need to train as hard. It's not gonna. I don't need to. The fight's not going to be as hard. I'm probably not going to have as much injuries as I would if I fought Mark Kerr. So of course the fight pay couldn't go down.
Yeah.
So it was like that for me. It was who do you? So the negotiations pretty much started like, okay, I just finished fighting Pride 5. Okay, next fight Pride 7. Take a break off Pride 6. Fight Pride 7. Okay, who do you have me to fight? They give me the list of fighters. Usually they give me 3 fighters. So I choose out of the 3. I take the one that I want to fight, that I think is going to be best, and I say, okay, how much do you? This is what I want. What can you offer? And then from there, if they offer me 50 grand, I say, no, that's not enough. I need 100 grand. And that's how it pretty much started. And I always, the strength of my negotiation was always that I always was willing to give up the fight.
Right.
So if they didn't meet my terms, almost like when you go shopping for something.
Yeah.
You always have to walk away once. You have to say, oh, you know what? Okay, I don't want it. Put it down and walk away. Even if you really want it and the price was good, if you want to bargain down, you got to see if they'll let you walk away.
I mean, that was really evident in the negotiation emails, because there's about like 4 or 5 with what's the name? The
Yukino.
Yukino saying, Egan, you haven't come back to me. Egan, you haven't responded to my fax. Egan, you haven't responded to my email. So it's kind of like you're doing that walk away.
Yeah, that was one of the games. Like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
We don't need it. We're done.
Leave it.
And we don't respond to them. And they're like, oh, then what happens is we see how much they need us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like, it was like a game, man. It was like a total game.
You know what's super different to now compared to back in the day is that a lot of the noise about fighters getting paid more is actually coming from the fans, people on Twitter, probably less than the actual fighters themselves, right? Like I feel like the fans are almost more vocal than some of these guys because they don't want to fall out with Dana and that side of things, which is strange.
That's true, totally.
Yeah, I don't know, it's a funny one because I always think like it comes down to the manager, right? It's you pay, if you're a fighter, you buy it, you pay for a manager. The manager needs to be doing the best job, right, to get that salary from you. If you've got a manager that's going out and saying, we're happy with this pay.
Yeah, but then on top of that too, the manager can fuck it up and make sure you're going to lose a fight.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a real fine line of the management doing a good job in getting the money and then a good job getting you to fight. So it's like one or the other sometimes. Sometimes you're going to get good money or you're going to fuck up and blow the fight because you're going to ask for too much.
I see what you mean.
So a good manager is not someone who gets the good money. Is a good manager is the one who can actually play it
get
right,
the right deal.
Where he can get as much as he can without losing the fight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you mentioned about the people on Twitter are the ones that are actually making the most noise about it and everything, and I got really mixed feelings because a lot of the people are criticizing Dana White for having this much money, having this much gate pay, this much pay-per-view, and he's only paying the fighters this much, and that comes to the question is where that should never be an issue, how much the promotion is making. What should be an issue is what is good fight pay for that fight. Yeah, so if I'm fighting Mark Kerr and my job is to train to fight Mark Kerr and I'm going to have to fight someone like Mark Kerr and I'm taking the damages, my fight pay is going to be according to the job I have to do. Regardless if I fight Mark Kerr in say in Shuto, where they're not they're going to make only a little money, and I fight Mark Kerr in Pride, where they're going to make more money, just because Pride makes say a funny just a random amount, say $10 million on the event, that doesn't change my job. I still have the same job, I still have the same opponent, and it would be nice to have a bonus, but I think my job is the same. No matter what ring it is, no matter what association it is. So I don't like when people are comparing on how much money the UFC is bringing in to what the pay is. I think that's something that is, hindsight's a blessing, to know how much he's making.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Because it's almost like you're saying, you're focusing on the fight itself, not what the promotion is making. And obviously, if it's a big fight, like Enson versus Mark Kerr, then a shooter is not going to be able to afford that fight because you know how much that fight is. So it almost how the promotion is performing is kind of irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
I think
I feel in my eyes, my day was like that. Yeah,
just trying to. Yeah, I think ultimately, the sentiment from fans on Twitter, wherever they are, is that they just want these fighters to have things like health insurance, to be taken care of, to make the best of the opportunities, right? And I think sometimes when they see the UFC making billions, they think like, oh, we want our fighters to be taken care of. So I think ultimately it's pretty cool that the fans are showing that sort of support. I think there are ones which kind of maybe have approached it the wrong way, where it's kind of like, and that's where you get this sort of like back and forth between two sides. But there's definitely like merit between both sides, right? I think.
And I think a lot of it also is why is it making this much money today? It's not just from this one event. Say they have a big event next week. It's not from that one event this next week. It's from the history of the sport. It's from all the sacrifices and all the pain that created the sport. And we all know that the Freddie brothers and Dana was behind on that. UFC was going bankrupt. The brothers were from the Station Casino Network. They were losing money because of that, because of the UFC. Dana had to beg the brothers to stick with it a little bit more. So I always say, the Dana's making a lot of money now, but he needs to. I mean, he deserves it. It's because of Dana the UFC is still here today. You know, so for me, sometimes I do think like, oh, Dana's making that much money. Yeah, maybe he should pay more, but you know, maybe the bonuses should be a little higher. But then I always have in the back of my mind the appreciation I have for Dana, thinking that if it wasn't for Dana, MMA wouldn't be what it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stand by that 100%.
Yeah. I mean, he's hard-headed, right? Like, he's pushed things forward in a lot of different times when people were pushing back. But yeah, I mean, it's super topical, right? It's always one where I think people have really strong opinions on, so it's really cool to get your opinion on fight.
Yeah, you know, I'm friends with Dana too, so that's another thing. You know, I mean, you know, if I did have an issue, well, the only issue I would have is, you know, I would say like, okay, Dana says he's gonna do this, but he changes his mind. So it's like almost like, oh, if Dana says it's not set in law, he could change his mind. Like, girls will never be in the UFC. But on the other hand, with that said, I would say also that a good leader is someone that can learn and change. Yeah. So he said, no women in the UFC ever. I mark my words on it. But then when he sees Ronda come in and how much Ronda brought to the sport and how much now the women are bringing to the sport. I mean, do you say, oh, Dana, you changed your mind, you didn't keep your word, or would you say, wow, props on you for changing your mind because look at what happened? You know? So, you know, as much as you could grumble about the guy, you could also prop him. So, you know,
and I would say that the way you're negotiating here with the Pride team, I don't think changes if it's Dana White. You know, that's what you. Yeah. If the email said Dana White at the end of it,
it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter,
yeah,
right?
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't just.
It's how you valued the fight, right? You felt like, this is the effort I'm putting in. This is what I believe the figure should be.
Yeah, and you know, the politeness and the respect you give respect where it is given. Yeah. So if you read their messages, there is some rude stuff that they say. And some pretty low shit they say to us too. So
it's highlighted within red pen.
Yeah, this is different. This is just
this
is not the ones. This is just stuff that we want to change. Yeah, like for example, this one on the line says. 40 days prior to we need to receive response in 72 hours. I was kind of thought was ridiculous. Yeah,
but in some of the emails there was definitely a lot of, you know, I think it said there was something about Mark Kerr, and then you scribbled on it, Mark Kerr lost the eagle.
Yeah, well, what we did was I felt the strength and the communication with them, wording and the way you say things would emphasize your feelings. And I felt the way Egan wrote it the first time was a little bit polite and it didn't express the dissatisfaction or the anger that I felt. Yeah, so I changed that. Yeah, so, you know, it's pretty much expressing your feelings. You know, it's hard when you do it in writing because they can't see your expression or hear your tone. Yeah. So it has to be, I feel like it has to be really important that the words you choose and the way you present it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an awesome conversation, and it's really cool to see kind of the historic perspective. Hopefully all the people that watch this appreciate that this is pretty confidential stuff, right? that you're sharing. So hopefully people appreciate that you're willing to share that. But if you do have any questions around what Enson thinks about fighter pay, or maybe something from Pride back in the day, then by all means write in the comments. Be sure to
make sure you like and subscribe and share. And check the back content. We have a lot of good content. If you like this content, there's something like this, so check it out. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any more questions about Pride, leave it in the comments. Hopefully I can answer them. And thanks for watching.